roughly difference between the two. So you have 290 electoral votes for Barack Obama to 203 electoral votes for Mitt Romney. And again, Mitt Romney has, at this particular point in time, won the popular vote, which basically gets me to my subject matter with our guest, Dave Champion. Should we eliminate the electoral vote? I mean, the Democrats have been all over this in the past and said, we don't like this, we don't want this, we want this out of here. And now basically it has come back to bit the Republicans in the behind. So is this something that possibly we want to get rid of to make this more of a unity vote of the people?
In my opinion, absolutely not.
Okay.
The reason is this. The selection of a president for the United States was never intended to be by popular vote.
Okay.
If we go back to what created the Electoral College, it was the debate amongst the Founding Fathers during the Constitutional Convention about how the president should be selected. And there were various views on how that should happen. And some people wanted popular votes. Some people wanted the state legislatures to decide who was going to be president. And so the compromise measure was the Electoral College. We also used to have the state legislators selecting the Senate, okay, before the 17th Amendment. And you and I are not old enough to even remember those days, and we're pretty old. So a lot has changed to move this country more towards a democracy. However, and I think this is really important, I'm quite a constitutionalist. That's my framework, my fundamental belief system. The United States was never constructed to be a democracy, although that's taught in the public school system today. The United States was structured as a constitutional republic, which is significantly different than a democracy. So what we've been doing is we've been pushing further and further and further away from what the founders intended, and I think tonight we have reached the pinnacle of moving away from what the founders intended.
Mm-hmm. How is this going to affect the country?
The outcome of the presidential election?
Yep. Where do you see taxes? Where do you see health care? Where do you see fuel costs? Well, energy?
All good questions. Let's look at the big picture to begin with. The president doesn't make the laws, Congress does. And the makeup of Congress is remaining essentially unchanged. However, in our modern society, with television and the strength of the executive being much stronger, the executive getting more publicity, the president sets the tone in many ways for the nation. And one of your earlier guests said, you know, if you're going to ask my opinion, you're going to get it. Well, you're about to get it in spades. Barack Obama is, in my view, and I don't mean this in a way to attack President Obama, I just see it as an objective reality. He is a communist. So this is the first time in the history of the United States of America that the people have, I don't think the first time around people really understood that he was a communist. I don't think there was enough information because, as we all know, he's guarded much of his private life and his private information. But enough has come out during this first term that I think everybody's pretty clear going into his second term that he is a communist. And I don't say that in the sense that somebody in the 50s would have said that, you know, oh my God, he's a communist. I mean it in a very objective way. He's just a communist, and we have to acknowledge that. So now we have the chief executive who sets the tone for the nation, is of a political persuasion that is the exact opposite, and I might say the enemy, of the framework created by the founders, which places this country in a very, very awkward, unusual, and by my standards, difficult situation going into the next 4 years.
Wow. So where is Barack Obama going to take this country? What is he going to do?
Well, he and his wife have been pretty clear. If we get a second term, since we don't have to worry about politicking because we're not going into a third term, boy, the things we can do if we get a second term. I think we're going to see some things that I feel personally are very disturbing. I think he's going to move us more towards the government being involved in every single aspect of our lives. He's going to integrate, in my view, he's going to want to integrate the government into every single, just anything you can think of. It's been bad, has it not, for the last 20, 30 years, government intervention in our lives at the federal level. I believe it's going to get dramatically worse. Healthcare is a perfect example. This is one of the last bastions where people, up until Obamacare, had some control over their own healthcare. Now we're going to see that eviscerated. I believe one of the more disturbing aspects is international relations. Barack Obama has a thoroughly different view than someone such as myself on how the United States should be functioning in the world community. I also happen to believe, I believe when I say he's a communist, that's an objective fact, and I can lay out all the particulars that support that. I have a belief that he also is a Muslim, in fact, despite what he says publicly. And again, I have nothing against Muslims. I do have something against deceit. If a man's a Muslim, stand up and say you're a Muslim. I believe that Barack Obama is a Muslim. I think that's going to dramatically affect how he interacts in the Middle East and in other parts of the world where the Muslim faith is dominant. I think we've sort of devolved into this position where it's the Christian culture versus the Muslim culture. And I don't really think that's the equation we should be looking at. What we should be looking at is national interest. And I think national interest should motivate our foreign policy. I don't think Barack Obama sees the national interest in the way you would or I would. I think the way Barack Obama sees the national interest is that the United States needs to no longer be the leader of the free world, as it's been known for the last 20 years, but the United States needs to diminish its leadership role and integrate into the world community more thoroughly, and just get on the team and be a team player with all these other countries without regard for our own particular national interest. And I think the goal eventually, in the minds of somebody like Barack Obama, is to integrate us into a one world government. And again, a lot of people see these terms, one world government, as conspiratorial. You can read the remarks of leftists and collectivists over the last 30 years, and they talk openly about one world government. But when somebody who's on the right side of the spectrum says one world government, oh, you've got that nutty conspiracy theory. Well, if it's a nutty conspiracy theory, I got it from reading the comments made by those people on the left. So I think that's where Barack Obama would like to take us internationally.
How does this affect us with Jerusalem? Israel. That's
going to be huge. I imagine tonight there are a lot of leaders in Israel that are beside themselves. I think what it means is, there's an interesting dynamic with the United States and Israel. There's a lot of people who believe that Israel leads the United States around by the nose. There's a whole segment of people who believe that. I don't happen to be one of those people. I believe that Israel very assertively promotes its agenda, and I believe that we interact with them, and oftentimes their agenda and our agenda are synonymous. However, I think that Barack Obama is not going to have that view, that our goals are not synonymous. We have to keep in mind that the Arab Spring notwithstanding, which I think we're going to find that it's not in our best interest in the long run, that notwithstanding, Israel is the only democracy in that entire portion of the world, and yet people are upset that we're an ally of the only democracy in that portion of the world. I find that an odd perspective. Mm-hmm. And I think Barack Obama, because of his Muslim faith, sees Israel and the fact that Israel is populated, of course, primarily, the vast majority, by Jews. For a Muslim, that's a problem. And of course, he's going to feel a kindred spirit with his fellow Muslims, just like Christians feel kindred spirit with their fellow Christians. So I suspect what we're going to see is a shift in the United States' role in that region that is, he hinted at it, I believe, by his actions in his first term. I think in the second term, the shift is going to be unprecedented.
The Bible basically states that in biblical times, in times that do not be deceitful by the one who basically everyone believes in as being their leader. Is Barack Obama that person?
No. You're referring to the Antichrist.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I can't say no. I don't know the mind of God.
I'm just bringing questions in that come to me, so
right.
Delivering it to you.
I suppose anything's possible, but I look at Barack Obama and I see him as a relatively trivial human being. And I don't mean to be offensive. I mean, he's the president of the United States. But when I look at how he conducts himself and how he makes his decisions and what motivates him, at least from my perspective as I look at him, he seems like a relatively trivial human being. I think, aside from the fact that he is going to damage the United States standing in the world dramatically and lower our standard of living dramatically, I think aside from that, in 20 years people will say, Barack who? I think whoever is going to fulfill that prophecy in the Bible concerning the Antichrist is going to be somebody who is a lot more substantive than is Barack Obama.
How do you think that Bill Clinton affected the outcome of this election by jumping on to persuade everyone that Barack Obama has everything right? And just another question from the viewers, basically. So
that was a great question. Bill Clinton is a fascinating guy. Corrupt as the day is long, but eloquent and smooth as the day is long. And there's a lot of people who buy into that. A lot of people who look at form over substance. He plays, what is it, the trumpet, I think. He plays the trumpet, he's a musician, he's cool, he's got a reputation that some people think is very appealing. And they don't look at who Bill Clinton really is. And so if one buys into the Bill Clinton mystique, which sadly I think a lot of Americans do, then I think it was hugely beneficial to Barack Obama. Because if someone who buys into that mystique is listening to Bill Clinton, they accept everything he says as the Word of God. So I think it was huge. Mm-hmm. I think it was significant. Because Barack Obama, I don't think, did himself any favors in this campaign.
All right, and my final question to you is how does China come into play now that Barack Obama has been reelected?
I don't think either person becoming president particularly affects the relationship between China and the United States for a couple of reasons. First of all, China enjoys the position right now of being and will continue to enjoy the position of being a primary supplier of almost everything we consume. That's not going to change anytime soon. Also, they have a very unique position in that they buy a monstrous amount of our debt. And so not only are they providing a huge percentage of the goods we buy in this country, unparalleled in the history of the United States, but they also hold an unparalleled amount of our debt. And as you probably know, creditors rule their debtors. And I think people lose track of that. They think in the international world that equation doesn't apply. And it applies just as much in the international community as it does locally.
So can we borrow any more money, or do we need to stop?
Well, we can borrow more money, but all that's going to happen... There's
consequences.
There are consequences, right. The consequences, I think, will be devastating. And one of the things I said going into this election season was neither Mitt Romney nor Barack Obama was going to make the kind of true commitment, for instance, vetoing the budget bills as they come through, the appropriation bills, the 7 appropriation bills that constitute the U.S. budget. Neither of these two characters were going to veto those bills because the spending was too dramatic and the borrowing was too dramatic. For that, we needed somebody who had true honor, somebody like a Ron Paul. And I know there's a lot of people who aren't in the Ron Paul camp, but I hope they would at least acknowledge Ron Paul didn't really give a fig about the political structure of America. He was, if he had been elected, he was going to sit down and do what he believed was right, no matter what pressure was put on him. So it took somebody like that to actually veto those bills and say, no, we're not going to spend this kind of money, and I'm not going to sign it. Neither Mitt Romney nor Barack Obama are that man.
If anybody in the audience would like to reach you, how do they reach you? Where do they listen to you? How would you like to have further contact?
They can contact me anytime they want by emailing Dave at davechampionshow.com. Or they can go to my website, www.davechampionshow.com, click on archives. Every show I've ever done is there.
Okay, very good. I'd like to thank Dave for coming in and giving us your perspective.
Thank you, Vern.
And that's not the perspective of KPVM TV, none of its employees or myself. It is Dave solely, and thank you for coming. We do have more election results, but the big ones we're waiting for are not here yet. We're still waiting for San Marino to get us our information.